The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, jolting me from the deepest sleep I'd had in months. My mother's voice was cold, clinical, like she was reading from a script. "Marcus, we need you to come get your things from the house. You have 48 hours." I rubbed my eyes, struggling to process her words through the fog of sleep. "What? Mom, what are you talking about? What things?" According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Everything. All of it. Sarah owns the house now. We've transferred the deed. The words hit me like ice water. Sarah. My younger sister by 3 years, who had dropped out of college twice, who had never held a job for more than 6 months, who had been living rent-free in our childhood home for the past 2 years while I scraped together every penny to help pay their mortgage from my apartment across town. "I don't understand," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. That's my house too. Grandpa left it to both of us." "Things change, Marcus. Sarah needs stability right now, and you're doing fine on your own. Fine on your own." The phrase echoed in my head as I sat up in bed, the full weight of what was happening crashing over me. The house on Maple Street wasn't just any house. It was our grandfather's legacy, a beautiful 1920s craftsman that he'd lovingly restored and explicitly left to both Sarah and me in his will. I had the documents to prove it. "Mom, you can't just— 48 hours, Marcus. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The line went dead. I stared at my phone in the darkness, my hands shaking. 3 years ago, when my parents had asked if Sarah could stay in the house temporarily after her latest relationship imploded, I'd said yes, without hesitation. When they'd struggled to keep up with the property taxes and maintenance, I'd stepped in, contributing nearly half my salary every month. When Sarah lost her job at the boutique, I'd covered her utilities. When she needed a new car, I'd co-signed the loan. And now they were stealing my inheritance and giving it to her. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, going through every legal document I had related to the house. Grandpa's will was crystal clear. The property was to be split equally between Sarah Catherine Miller and Marcus Joseph Miller upon our parents' deaths, or if they chose to relinquish guardianship of the estate earlier. There were no conditions, no clauses that would allow them to simply decide one child deserved it more than the other. By sunrise, I had made 17 phone calls, first to a lawyer, who confirmed that my parents couldn't legally transfer a property that wasn't entirely theirs to transfer, then to the county records office, then to my bank. With each call, the picture became clearer and more infuriating. They'd forged my signature. 3 weeks ago, while I was traveling for work, someone had signed documents transferring my 50% ownership to Sarah. The signature was decent. Probably Sarah's. Work. She'd always been good at art. But it wasn't mine. More importantly, the documents hadn't been notarized with me present, which made them fraudulent. I should have driven straight to the police station. I should have called my lawyer back and started the process of criminal charges. Instead, I drove to Maple Street. The house looked exactly the same as it had when I'd stopped by 6 months ago to fix the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. The same bathroom where Grandpa had taught me to shave, where he'd told me stories about serving in Korea, where he'd made me promise to always take care of family. Sarah's car was in the driveway, a gleaming white SUV that I was still paying for. My parents' sedan was there too. They were all inside my house, probably celebrating. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, watching the windows, remembering. Grandpa's workshop in the basement where he'd taught me woodworking. The kitchen where he'd made his famous Sunday pancakes. The living room where we'd watched Cubs games and he'd told me that someday, when I had a family of my own, this house would be my anchor. Family takes care of family, Marcus. He'd said the week before he died. But don't let anyone take advantage of that good heart of yours. I'd failed him on both counts. The plan formed slowly, methodically, over the next 47 hours. I didn't go to the house to collect my things. Not yet. Instead, I went to work, acting normal, while my mind raced through possibilities. Direct confrontation wouldn't work. My parents had clearly chosen Sarah, and they'd never been swayed by logic where she was concerned. Legal action would take months, maybe years, and by then they might find ways to muddy the waters further. But I had something they didn't expect. 3 years of financial records showing exactly how much money I'd put into maintaining that house. Property tax payments, utility bills, repair costs, maintenance fees. I'd kept meticulous records because I'd been planning to claim them as deductions for rental property maintenance, thinking, naively, that I was managing an asset Sarah and I would eventually share. I also had something else: intimate knowledge of every system in that house, every quirk, every hidden problem that Grandpa had taught me to fix. The night before my 48 hours were up, I drove to Maple Street one last time. Sarah's car was gone, probably out celebrating with friends, but my parents were home. I could see the blue glow of the television through the living room windows. I used my key for what I knew would be the last time. "Marcus!" My mother's voice was sharp with surprise as I walked into the living room. "You're cutting it close. We told you—" 48 hours. I know. I kept my voice calm, measured. "I'm here for my things." My father didn't even look up from his recliner. "Make it quick. Sarah will be back soon." I nodded and headed upstairs to what had been my childhood bedroom. Sarah had already moved her clothes into the master bedroom, Grandpa's room, and I could see makeup and jewelry scattered across his antique dresser. The sight made my chest tighten with rage, but I pushed it down. I packed methodically: clothes, books, a few mementos. But I also retrieved some items my family had forgotten I'd left there. The spare keys to every lock in the house, the combination to the safe in the basement where Grandpa had kept important documents, the location of the main water shutoff, the electrical panel access codes, the security system master reset. As I loaded boxes into my truck, my mother hovered in the doorway. "You know we didn't want it to come to this," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Sure, Mom. Sarah she needs this more than you do. You're stable. You have your own place. Because I work for it. That's not fair. Sarah's been struggling." "With what?" I turned to face her, a box of books in my arms. "What exactly has Sarah been struggling with that I haven't been paying for?" My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound. "The car payment I co-signed for? The credit card debt I helped her consolidate? The phone bill I've been covering for 2 years? Or maybe you mean the rent she hasn't paid for living in a house I've been maintaining?" "You're being cruel, Marcus." "I'm being accurate." I loaded the last box and slammed the tailgate harder than necessary. Through the living room window, I could see my father still in his recliner, still ignoring the conversation that was tearing his family apart. "Give me back my key," my mother said. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had raised me, who had read me bedtime stories, who had taught me to ride a bike in the driveway of the house she was now stealing from me. Then I pulled out my key ring, removed the house key, and placed it in her palm. "There you go," I said. "Hope it was worth it." The real work began the next morning. I started with the financial institutions: Bank of America, where the mortgage was held; ComEd for the electricity; People's Gas; AT&T for internet and cable; Chicago Water Department. I had been the primary contact for all of these services for the past 3 years, ever since I'd started helping with expenses. "I need to remove my financial responsibility from these accounts," I told each customer service representative. "I'm no longer associated with the property." It was remarkably easy. A few identity verification questions, some reference numbers from old bills, and I was free and clear. The accounts would need new guarantors by the end of the month, or service would be discontinued. I also called my insurance company and removed the umbrella policy I'd been maintaining on the property, and my homeowner's warranty company, and the landscaping service I'd hired to keep the yard looking respectable. But the masterstroke was the tax situation. For 3 years, I'd been claiming legitimate business deductions related to the property maintenance, treating my contributions as investment expenses for what I believed was my share of a rental property. This was all completely legal and documented. However, if I was no longer a property owner, as the fraudulent document suggested, then those deductions had been filed incorrectly. I called my accountant. "I need to file amended returns for the past 3 years," I explained. "It turns out I don't actually have ownership stake in a property I thought I co-owned." My accountant, a sharp woman named Patricia who had handled Grandpa's estate, immediately understood the implications. "Marcus, if you've been claiming expenses on property you don't own, the IRS is going to want that money back. With penalties. We're talking about—" She did some quick calculations. "Roughly $43,000, plus interest and penalties, probably close to $60,000 total. And if the property ownership is disputed, then they'll go after whoever the current legal owner is for the discrepancy." Perfect. The tax amendment would trigger an automatic audit of the property. The IRS would discover the ownership discrepancy when they cross-reference the tax claims with the property records. They'd find the fraudulent signature, and they'd demand immediate payment from the current legal owner, Sarah, who had never filed a tax return that showed property ownership income. While all of this was brewing in the background, I waited. Sarah called me 4 days later, her voice panicked. "Marcus, what did you do? The power's been shut off." "I didn't do anything." I removed myself from the account like Mom asked. "You can't just, 'We need electricity.' Then pay the deposit and get it turned back on. It's your house now, remember? I don't have $1,500 for deposits." I could hear my mother in the background, her voice shrill. She grabbed the phone. "Marcus, this is ridiculous. You're being petty." "I'm being responsible. I'm no longer financially liable for a property I don't own. We'll pay you back for everything you've put into the house." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Really? You'll pay me back the $62,000 I've contributed over 3 years?" Silence. "Get the power turned back on, Marcus." "No." I hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated exactly as I'd hoped they would. First the electricity, then the gas when they couldn't afford both deposits. The internet and cable were discontinued. The water was next. That deposit was the highest because of some unpaid bills from years ago. But the real chaos began when the IRS letter arrived. Sarah called me screaming. "They want $60,000. They're saying I owe back taxes on property income I never reported. Sounds like a problem for a property owner. I never claimed income from this house." Well, someone did. Someone claimed a lot of expenses related to maintaining it. If that's not legitimate, the government wants their money back. "This is insane. You're trying to ruin us. I'm not trying to do anything." I amended my tax returns to reflect my actual ownership stake in the property. Everything I did was completely legal, but Sarah wasn't done. 3 days later, she showed up at my apartment at 6 in the morning, pounding on the door hard enough to wake my neighbors. "Fix this!" she screamed when I opened the door. "Fix this right now!" She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. She'd been staying at friends' houses since the utilities were cut off. "I can't fix anything, Sarah. I don't own the house anymore, remember? The house is unlivable. There's no power, no water, no heat. Then sell it." "I can't sell it. There's a tax lien now. No one will buy it with $60,000 in tax debt attached. I shrugged. Sounds like you should have thought about that before you forged my signature. Her eyes went wide. She hadn't expected me to know. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because the county has the documents with your version of my signature on them. The ones that were never notarized with me present, which makes them fraudulent. Sarah's face went pale. Marcus, please. I'm sorry, okay? We were desperate. Mom and Dad thought you'd never notice, that you'd just be happy for me. Happy that you stole my inheritance? We thought you didn't care about the house. You never visit. You don't live there. Because I have my own life. Because I work for a living instead of depending on other people to support me. She started crying then, big, ugly sobs that reminded me of when we were kids, and she'd broken something valuable and was trying to avoid punishment. Please, Marcus. I'll sign the house back over to you. We'll split it like Grandpa wanted. Just make the tax thing go away. You can't make the tax thing go away, Sarah. And you can't sign the house back over to me? Why not? Because you never legally owned it in the first place. The documents were fraudulent, remember? Which means right now, it's unclear who owns the property at all. The probate court is going to have to sort it out, which will take months. Maybe years. The truth was, I'd already spoken with my lawyer about the fastest path to resolution. With the fraudulent documents exposed, ownership would revert to the original estate distribution, 50-50 between Sarah and me. But she didn't need to know how long that would actually take. You're destroying the house, she whispered. I'm not doing anything to the house. I'm just not paying for it anymore. That night she called me 17 times. I didn't answer. The next morning my parents showed up at my office. My father, who hadn't said 10 words to me during the entire confrontation at the house, spoke first. You need to stop this, son. I looked up from my computer, genuinely surprised to see them. Stop what? You know what? This vendetta against your sister. I don't have a vendetta against anyone. I just corrected some tax filings and removed myself from utility accounts for a property I don't own. My mother stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. You're being vindictive and childish. I'm being accurate and responsible. The house is falling apart. There are pipes freezing. The basement is starting to flood without the sump pump running. Then maybe Sarah should pay to have the utilities turned back on. She doesn't have the money. Then maybe you should help her. We're on a fixed income, Marcus. You know that. I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. Even now, with everything falling apart, they couldn't see it. They couldn't understand that their golden child, their precious Sarah who needed constant rescuing, had cost them everything. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You gave away half of my inheritance to Sarah because I was doing fine on my own. But now you want me to financially support the property you gave her because she can't manage it herself. That's not, my mother started. That's exactly what this is. You want me to subsidize her ownership of my grandfather's house? My father's jaw tightened. Your grandfather would be ashamed of how you're acting. The words hit harder than I'd expected, but I kept my voice level. Grandpa would be ashamed that you let Sarah forge my signature to steal my inheritance. He'd be ashamed that you thought so little of his wishes that you'd circumvent his will to play favorites. We were trying to help. You were trying to enable. Same as you've always done. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She's your sister, Marcus. And I was your son. The past tense hung in the air between us. You still are, my father said quietly. Am I? Because it seems like you made your choice about which child mattered more. They left without another word. The crisis reached its peak 3 weeks later in the middle of a particularly brutal Chicago cold snap. Sarah called me at 2 a.m, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Marcus, please, I need help. The pipes burst. There's water everywhere. I was instantly awake. Where are you? At the house. I came to check on things, and there's water pouring through the ceiling in the kitchen. It's ruined, Marcus. Everything is ruined. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the anger and the hurt, she was still my little sister. And this was still Grandpa's house. Get out of the house, Sarah. Right now. Go to Mom and Dad's. I can't just leave? Yes, you can. There's nothing you can do tonight. If the pipes burst, you need to stay away until the water can be shut off properly. I don't know how to shut off the water. Of course she didn't. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall, torn between the desire to let natural consequences play out and the knowledge that every hour of flooding was destroying something irreplaceable. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I heard myself saying. The scene at the house was worse than I'd imagined. Water was pouring through the light fixtures in the kitchen, pooling on the hardwood floors that Grandpa had refinished himself in 1987. The basement was flooded, and I could hear the electric circuits shorting out in the main panel. I found the main water shutoff and stopped the immediate crisis, but the damage was extensive. Months of neglect without proper heating had weakened the pipes, and the cold snap had finished the job. Sarah stood in the ruined kitchen, shivering in pajamas and a winter coat, looking lost. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I looked around at the destruction, at Grandpa's house dying by degrees, and felt something shift inside me. The anger was still there, but it was mixed now with something else. Exhaustion, maybe. Or sadness. The insurance lapsed when I removed the policy, I told her. This damage isn't covered. She nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks. The house is probably a total loss now. Even if we could afford repairs, the water damage to the electrical system, the hardwood, the plaster walls. I know. We stood in silence for a long moment, our breath visible in the freezing air. I never wanted the house, she said finally. I just wanted Mom and Dad to stop being disappointed in me. I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in years. She was 28 years old and had never learned to take care of herself because no one had ever required it of her. Every failure had been cushioned, every consequence avoided, every responsibility transferred to someone else. They were never disappointed in you, Sarah. Yes, they were. They still are. I'm not like you, Marcus. I'm not smart or responsible or successful. You never had to be. Every time you messed up, they fixed it for you. Every time you faced a consequence, they removed it. She wiped her nose with the back of her glove. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've never learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I want to resolve the ownership dispute, I told him. The tax line complicates things, but we can probably. I want to deed my half of the property to Sarah, all of it, free and clear. There was a pause. Marcus, given the property values in that area, you'd be giving up roughly $200,000 in equity. I understand. And she'll still be responsible for the tax debt and the repair costs. I understand that too. The paperwork took 2 weeks. When it was finalized, Sarah owned the house outright, along with the $60,000 tax debt, the flood damage, and the responsibility for bringing the utilities and safety systems back up to code before it could be legally occupied. She called me the day she received the deed. Why? She asked. Because it's what you wanted. But the taxes, the repairs, I'll have to sell it. And with the lien and the damage, I'll probably lose money. Probably. You could have just waited. Let the courts sort out the ownership dispute and gotten your half back. Yes. So why give it all to me? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Because you need to learn what ownership actually costs. And I need to stop enabling you to avoid those costs. I don't understand. Grandpa left us that house because he wanted us to have something solid, something that would anchor us. But ownership isn't just about having something. It's about taking responsibility for it. For 3 years, you got to live in that house while I took responsibility for it. That's not ownership. That's just extended childhood. She was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to lose everything, aren't I? Maybe. Or maybe you'll figure out how to handle it. Maybe you'll find a way to make it work, or sell it, and use whatever equity you can salvage to start over properly. But whatever happens, it'll be because of choices you make, not choices other people make for you. And if I can't handle it, then you'll learn something important about yourself. The house sold 6 months later, at a significant loss. After the tax debt, repair estimates, and real estate fees, Sarah netted about $40,000. She used $25,000 to pay off her credit card debt and car loan, and put the rest toward a deposit and first year's rent on a small apartment. She got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and she kept it. My parents didn't speak to me for 8 months. When my father finally called, it was to tell me that my mother was in the hospital, a minor heart episode, but it had scared them both. I know you're angry, he said, and you have a right to be. But she's asking for you. I visited her in the hospital. She looked smaller somehow, older. I'm sorry, she said without preamble. We were wrong. About the house, about Sarah, about all of it. I know. Do you think you can forgive us? I considered the question seriously. The betrayal had been profound, the trust broken in a way that might never fully heal. But they were still my parents, flawed and human and trying to do what they thought was right, even when they were catastrophically wrong. I'm working on it, I told her. Sarah sent me a Christmas card that year. Inside, she'd written a simple message. Thank you for letting me grow up. I kept the card. A year later, I bought a different house. Not as grand as Grandpa's Craftsman, but solid and comfortable, and entirely mine. Sarah helped me move in, carrying boxes without complaint and admiring the way I'd set up Grandpa's workshop tools in the basement. He'd be proud of you, she said as we shared pizza on my new living room floor. Of both of us, I think. She smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached her eyes. Yeah, I think so too. Sometimes the cruelest kindness is allowing someone to face the full consequences of their choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop protecting someone from the very lessons they need to learn. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what you're actually capable of building. The house on Maple Street was demolished 8 months after Sarah sold it. A developer built condominiums on the lot. I drove by once just to see, and felt only a distant sadness for what was lost and what might have been. But in my workshop, surrounded by Grandpa's tools and the smell of sawdust, I could still hear his voice. Family takes care of family, Marcus. But don't let anyone take advantage of that good heart of yours. I'd finally learned the difference.